Today, more economic news that sounds good, but in fact spells bad. The Reserve Bank today cut official interest rates yet again to just 0.75%. That's way below even emergency levels. Well, the Treasurer said, great, it shows that borrowers will save money that they can then spend.
What this means for an Australian family with a mortgage of $400,000 is $720 less a year in interest payments.
But in fact, this is the Reserve Bank trying to kickstart an economy that is slowing when unemployment is rising, when wages are barely rising at all.
If the Liberals were doing a good job managing the economy, the Reserve Bank wouldn't have had to cut rates again today. Interest rates are a quarter of what they were during the depths of the global financial crisis. They're now at record lows. They're below 1% for the first time ever.
And the worst is that the Reserve Bank feels it's got to keep cutting interest rates, even though former Federal Treasurer Peter Costello says that won't work. Economic reforms would work, but not yet more cuts of the kind that haven't. Joining me is the panel, Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching and Grahame Morris, former Chief of Staff to Prime Minister John Howard. Grahame, the government, I don't know, it seems a little paralysed, you know, it's given tax cuts, but they don't seem to have had much effect, and it doesn't seem to have a plan B.
No, but I think it's almost time we had Mr. and Mrs. every person and a grandma on the Reserve Bank board. You know, it seems to me if you just cut a little bit, that didn't work, cut a little bit, that didn't work, and you cut again, and oh, surprise, surprise, that doesn't work. What you're doing is the mums and dads are just paying off their mortgage, they're not spending, and people forget that the grandmas who were relying on those interest rates, they don't spend at all because they're terrified of what's happening to their income. And it just you know, it seems to me the Reserve Bank should have done nothing, and they should save up some of this stuff for a rainy day and not just drip, drip, drip every time it drizzles.
Look, Grahame makes a good point there, Kimberley, but the point is, of course, that the Reserve Bank has got a mandate. They have to do whatever they can to get the inflation rate up to that band, and this is about all they can do.
This is about all they can do, and they have called time and time again for the government to use some of the other economic levers it has at its disposal. But, of course, they're very keen to get a surplus, and we all understand that would be good, but a surplus and that kind of restraint isn't actually going to help our economy at the moment. I mean, the news just in tonight is that David Jones in Burke Street is closing. That is the latest in a long line of, you know, if you go to any strip shopping centres in Melbourne, you'll see shops that are empty, shops for lease. Why? Because consumers do not have confidence that the economy is going well.
Kimberley, it's not just that, of course, and there's also the internet.
But I'm actually saying that because Grahame mentioned mums and dads, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But if you look at pensioners, mums and dads, people who are trying to make ends meet, they have slower, you know, there's stagnating or stagnated wages growth. They don't, you know, there's a lot of underemployment or unemployment.
No, I've got that, but
employment is very high.
But the thing is, Grahame, it's not just an alternative of do nothing or spend a lot of stimulus. Surely there's a third option, which Peter Costello was talking about. How about reforms, workplace reforms, or, you know, banking reform, whatever, other reforms in how we work and how we employ people?
Look, I agree with that, but I think it shows you how weak our business leadership is. You know, the business community goes to the poor old politicians and says, you know, fix this, fix that, fix industrial relations. Now, what should happen is that the business community should make the case out there in public land, and then the politicians can say, oh, I see, OK, the electorate wants the change that you're talking about, let's do it. Instead of that, the business community say, hey, politicians, fix our problem. Well, it's about time they got off their own backsides.
Well, that is actually a good point. And notice that, the two of the big business outfits, like Innes Willox and all that, they did put out a statement about 4 months ago, I can't remember exactly, calling for a reform, and I've seen nothing since. So that was their big gun, I guess. Hey, listen, I want to put up a statue, Kimberley, to the most amazing and inspiring Australians I've heard of in months. And I'm talking about the council of Moyne Shire near Warrnambool on Victoria's coast. The Morrison government gives this council $1 million saying, hey, listen, your shire is in drought, you need the money. The Bureau of Meteorology today said it was sure of it, the shire is in drought. The council today said, we're not accepting the money because there is no drought, we're having a great season, go away. Here's the Mayor.
Thank you, but no thanks. We will not be applied for the money. We are not in any drought position down here. It is green, the cows and the sheep are feeding well, there's water lying in paddocks.
Seems almost un-Australian. What do you make, Kimberley, of the heroism of turning down a $1 million grant?
Look, I think, firstly, I think they're good on them. They're good Australians because they're actually concerned about the other councils who put in applications for drought funding and they're saying we don't need it. Now, apparently, because I was speaking with someone down there because this became obvious on the weekend that perhaps the government had kind of misdirected some drought relief. I mean, there's a very serious side to this as well. But they said, it's raining down here, the grass is green. It's been a great season. And in fact, at first they thought that the grant should have gone to Moira Council, and in fact there was a typo.
The government's doubling down.
And now they're saying, oh, actually they could get the money and they don't need it. But, I mean, you think about
Grahame,
the other councils around Australia.
It's a misappropriation of the money, but the point is they've turned it down. Grahame, here's the thing. I think it's un-Australian in one sense. That's why I want a statue to, shift the conversation. What do you think voters will think down there of their council saying no to free money?
Look, I think everyone's had a bit of a giggle about this. It does look as if it's a bit of a cock-up. Look, I had a lot of time for the Bureau of Meteorology, and that's what the information was based on. But I think something close to you, Andrew, it just seems to me if our best scientists in the weather can't work out whether or not it's raining up the road, how are they going to work out what's going to happen in 50 years' time?
Spot on, Grahame. Well, what's going wrong with their model, but also their refusal to admit error? I mean, you've actually got... I've looked at their maps. There is no drought there. You look at the footage. There is no drought there. You listen to the locals. There is no drought there. But the government's relying on science that says there is. I mean, is this not a metaphor for global warming?
Look, ignoring that, it's a bit sad because the government is actually doing a bloody lot of work on the drought stuff. And here we are, we've got one little hiccup and we're focusing on that. But, by geez, the amount of work that is going into not only this drought, but the next couple is really fairly impressive.
I agree with that. But listen, before I go, and I've run out of time, basically, but let me do it anyway. A church in Sweden has literally hailed global warming crusader Greta Thunberg as the new messiah. The pastor at Lindhans says, announcement, Jesus of Nazareth has now appointed one of his successors, Greta Thunberg. What does this tell you, Kimberley, in the 7 seconds I've left?
Look, I think it's good that we've got engaged youth, but I feel there's probably a lot of other children who've had a lot tougher lives.
OK. Grahame Morris, Kimberley Kitching, thank you so much to you both.